Hello and welcome to Crucible of Words for more dedicated legacy action. Today I'm once again dipping into my beloved green-black Turbodepths. For those who are unfamiliar, this is a deck where we win almost exclusively with Marit Lage, which we make from the Dark Depths. We either strip all the counters with a Hexmage, or we make a copy of it with Thespian Stage, and because Thespian Stage wasn't a Dark Depths when it entered, it won't have counters and we'll get a 20/20. So the idea is, opponent's end step usually, we make a 20/20, untap, bash our opponent. To make this happen, we've got 10 tutors, Reclaimer, Rotation, Scrying. We've got 8 pieces of fast mana to power this out quicker, and then we have some disruption here. So we've got Pithing Needle for Caracas and Wasteland, that sort of jazz. We've got Thoughtseize to pick apart our opponent's hand if they've got something that goes quicker than us, or if we need to take out a key piece of removal. And we have Vexing Bauble to really slow down some of our opponent's decks. This means that we don't have to worry about Force of Will, so we can crop rotate into a Force of Will quite handily, and that has proven to be quite useful. The last build I ran had 2 Vexing Baubles in the main, I think. And we're going to try a 4 Vexing Bauble list today and see how it feels. On mana base, we've got a few little silver bullets we can find, like Boseiju to blow up a problem permanent, Bojuka Bog to get rid of graveyards, Ghost Quarter can kill a Wasteland or a Caracas, Sejiri Steppe we can protect, and this becomes better off of crop rotation if we have the Bauble, because then our opponent can't Force of Will very easily, so we're more likely to get our crop rotation to work. And we have a one of Shifting Woodland. This was quite good last time I played it, so this allows us to, after our first combo has failed, we can then use this as a one-card way of making a 20/20, because this becomes a copy of Dark Depths, and again, it didn't enter as a Dark Depth, so it doesn't have the counters, so we just get the 20/20. So that's pretty much the main deck. I really want to see how good these Vexing Baubles are, and quite often our deck's going to struggle against a deck with lots of pinpoint white removal anyway, so we just kind of shore up our sort of average matchups by making our worst matchups a little bit worse, because we don't have Not of This World in it anymore. So we're trying this approach and seeing how it feels. I'm not sure if this is correct, but that's what testing is for. Sideboard wise, we do need to shore up those matchups against all the white removals. So we've got a couple of Safekeeper, a Tamiyo Safekeeping, and we've got a couple of Legolas quick reflexes. These are how we're going to fight against like the heavy Swords to Plowshare style decks. We've got a couple more Duress if we need to pack some more disruption for our opponent. Got some Abrupt Decays for Magus of the Moon, Blood Moon, Opposition Agent, and we got 4 Faerie Macabre for Graveyard Hate. I like this because it's a turn 0 piece. It's not going to get caught by our own Vexing Bauble like the Surgical Extraction does. And this is the thing that gets discarded, which helps get Delirium for our Shifting Woodland, if that's the thing that's relevant. So yeah, that's the list. If you're interested in this deck, I have a lot of content of this on my channel, so you can go back and have a look at various different builds. And I have a detailed guide to this deck, as well as Rainbow Depths, on my Patreon, which is linked in the description below. So by all means, check that out if you're interested. The guide to it gets updated monthly with a little discussion of where the meta is right now. So if this is a deck that interests you, go for it and check out my Patreon. I'm a big fan of this deck. I think it's actually quite well positioned because it's actually pretty good against like the scamming style decks, which is a lot of the meta. It's like Scam and Grixis Tempo are like most of the meta now. So having a deck that's good against those is pretty reasonable. And that's where we're at. Sometimes we're still going to get griefed out of the game. But we are relatively resilient to that, at least compared to a lot of other stuff in the format. Preamble over and done with. Time to like and subscribe, sit back and watch me make some 20/20s. Alright, so our opener, we can go turn 1, Urborg, Vexing Bauble, turn 2, Sylvan Scrying, turn 3, Marit Lage. That seems reasonable. We obviously want to play out our Lotus Petal before we do anything with our Vexing Bauble, because this is a little bit of a non-bo, but obviously we decide when the Bauble comes in. I think we do play the Urborg out here because we don't want to give up our persistent green source, and if we draw a Dark Depths, we want to be able to go next turn. So let's play this Bauble and go shields up against things like Grief being pitch cast, our opponent's Force of Wills, or just some pretty busted combo decks that are going to spam a bunch of permanents for 0 mana, like Baubles, Chromoxes, Lotus Petals, that sort of jazz. If we draw another piece of fast mana as well, we get to make the Marit Lage next turn. Planar Nexus. So we're probably on Cloud Post over there. That's good to know. Elvish Spirit Guide. Okay. That is the exact sort of thing we were after. So let's cast this. We'll pitch these 2 things. We'll go and get ourselves a Dark Depths here. We'll play our Dark Depths. We'll make a Vampire Hexmage. We have to watch out for... Oh, Disruptor Flute. Sure. I was going to say we have to watch out for an opposing Kozilek's command sort of thing. So they're going to name Vampire Hexmage, so we don't get to remove the counters from our Dark Depths. However, if we find any green source, we can just blow that up. Oh, there's a new Summoning Sickness art. Sure, we're both playing Vexing Baubles. That means we can probably crack ours with some amount of confidence here. Alright, we found a green source anyway. I think we just attack. We survive this turn. We blow up their land. Not their land, the Disruptor Flute. Urza's Tower. Yep, so that taps for quite a lot of mana. The One Ring. That is an annoying one. What's our solution to this? So we want to find a Pithing Needle now. We can crack this Vexing Bauble. It's not really doing anything here. There's no point blowing this up now. Another Urborg. That's not where we want to be. So they've got protection, so there's no point making our thing then. We don't get to do anything with our hand right now. We can attack, but it doesn't achieve anything. Let's hope our opponent doesn't do anything scary enough to win the game this turn. And that our lovely little Boseiju can get the work done. So we've got another Disruptor Flute. They can flash in response to our Boseiju, which is very irritating. Imagine our opponent's first port of call here is to tap their One Ring. So the cards I'm most worried about is probably Kozilek's Command, because that can kill our creature. Because it exiles a creature with mana value X or less. They can just, for 2 colourless mana, just wipe our Marit Lage. And it's not a thing we can crop rotate to prevent if we had a crop rotation. Right, our opponent's drawing some more cards. Tapped Cloud Post, so that means their current Cloud Post is tapping for 3. Khan the Great Creator. Okay, that's pretty good. What are they going to reveal here? An Ensnaring Bridge. And they're going to cast the Ensnaring Bridge. That's kind of annoying. So now we have multiple permanents we kind of want to blow up. But we can just try and win this game via a Thespian stage instead. So we have options. Another Vexing Bauble. Well, we can attack this Khan down. That's not nothing. So I think we're casting this. This will mean we need to get a green source to be able to Boseiju. But I think trying to draw a green source isn't the most difficult thing in the world. The other option is we play the Reclaimer, and then next turn we can fish up the things we require. I think we need to have a Thespian stage in play. So we're going to get the stage, play the stage, play the Bauble. It doesn't get to activate, unfortunately. But we're just looking for a green source. We can nail the Ensnaring Bridge, and then it only takes 1 green mana once we have a Marit Lage in play to channel the Boseiju, because it costs 1 less for each legendary creature you control. So if we can find any green source, we can attempt it in the next turn cycle. They're making the One Ring into an indestructible 4/4. That's not too shabby. So that this can help them turtle up. Yeah, Khan's a bit of a doozy for us, isn't it? What are they going to go and grab here? A Mycosynth Lattice. And they can cast that Lattice. Now this doesn't beat us, because we have Elvish Spirit Guide in that deck. But it does make things very challenging. And whether or not I actually want to play from this point onwards is another matter. Bojuka Bog. I don't think I want to play this game. Like, we can draw like runner on Elvish Spirit Guides and then channel the Boseiju to kill the Lattice, but then we still have to deal with the Ensnaring Bridge. Alright, there's definitely some cards here that don't feel great, and that would be the Vexing Baubles. They can get out of here, and we can bring in some Abrupt Decays. Duress is something I'm somewhat interested in. We don't need a Bojuka Bog in this matchup. The Sejiri Steppe doesn't look very useful. Our opponent seems to be colourless. But there is a possibility they are running green, so whether or not we want to keep this Sejiri Steppe remains to be seen. But this gets us 1 Duress if we want it. And then we're looking for 1 more slot if we want to play the other Duress. I think going fast is going to be useful, so I do want our fast mana here. Even though it's a little bit awkward with Khan. I think I will keep this as this, with just the extra singular Duress. This is normally a matchup that's pretty good, so I'm... okay. Seems pretty useful. We can keep this. We can play Urborg, Lotus Petal. Next turn we can play Hexmage. And we have a crop rotation we can flash in. Or, you know, not necessarily flash in, but cast instant speed to get us a nice little friend. Thoughtseize. We can't do it all. So we're just going to make this Hexmage. And we'll pass. Let's crop rotate here. So Kozilek's return is something that we have to be aware of here. I don't just want to fire this off, do I? No, I think we want to try and get this Thoughtseize going first. Playing slightly slower, but our opponent does have a face-up answer to our creature. Potentially, anyway. Emrakul, the Eon's Torn. Crop rotation, crop rotation. I don't want them to have double crop rotation. I think the plan here is we take one crop rotation, we expect them to crop rotate, and then we just go and get our, what's it called? Ghost Quarter. If we get the Ghost Quarter now, that kind of tips our opponent off to what's happening. Caracas is a thing that they can have as well. What are we supposed to do here? We can get the Ghost Quarter and deploy it right now. But that does leave us cold to Caracas. We need a Pithing Needle, ideally. Alright, I think we can wait. So we can deal with, like, Glacial Chasm or Maze of Ith style effects. But the problem with the Caracas is it just gets to bounce our guy. So we probably see the forest here. Yep, there it is. They haven't cast a spell yet, right? So they can do a free Once Upon a Time. If we go for it now, we just get hit by a Caracas. We need to get our Pithing Needle in. Thespian stage. Does that help? Probably doesn't hinder us, does it? Alright, they want to attack. They probably have their own Thespian stage, which is something we need to be aware of as well. Let's get another Hexmage. We can at least up our ability to attack our opponent's life total here. If our opponent doesn't have a Caracas in their deck, I'd be incredibly surprised. It's certainly going to be in their 75. Alright, so now we're seeing the free Once Upon a Time. They have access to quite a lot of mana this turn. Oh, there's the Caracas. That is actually good news for us. Unless they've got Echoing Deeps. So they have to play the Caracas now. Because otherwise we can make the 2020 and whatever land they get is not going to be good enough. I suppose if they get a Maze of Ith with the right timing, they can bounce our guy back and then they can play the Caracas next turn. So that is a little bit awkward. Yep, they play the Caracas out. That is useful for us. A Sylvan Scrying. This is our only green mana source in the Lotus Petal. I guess we can Thespian stage for a mana source as well if we need to. And we'll crack for 4 here. We can Ghost Quarter away the Caracas, which might force our opponent into a Glacial Chasm line. There's a Glimmer Post. Our opponent has quite a lot of the old manas over there. We're going to see something like a Green Sun Zenith. Just the Myco Spawn. Alright. So they get to exile one of our lands. So we're going to do some responses. But we're going to see where they want to target these things. We've got a crop rotation that we have to worry about. Alright, so we get... So what land can they get here? They could get something like a Wasteland. I think the correct play here is to... We could just copy... Oh, this is just exile any land, isn't it? Interesting. What do they get here? If we hit this Caracas... If they've got an Echoing Deeps, that's going to be a problem for us. They were thinking about Elvish Spirit Guiding to crop rotate this away. They didn't really need to do that. Because they can go and get a basic here. We need to make our 2020 before our opponent gets to tutor. Because they're more likely to have something like a Wasteland that they can grab. It's certainly annoying that we're going to lose this Thespian stage. A Yavimaya would be a reasonable draw, but not ideal still. Because we're not able to Sylvan Scrying and go and fetch what we need. So we can get the Sylvan Scrying, but we can't Boseiju as well. Alright, so they did get a Wasteland. And now we're losing all of our permanents. Do they have a Tabernacle? Tabernacle doesn't defeat Marit Lage. Okay, let's see what they have. Glacial Chasm is almost certainly in their deck. Let's see how bad it is. It's just a Maze of Ith. Okay. So we need to draw a Pithing Needle or a Boseiju here. Either of those will get the job done. But we are on a clock. Because there is an Emrakul over there. So it's what, 11 mana now? And they got 12 off of the Spirit Guide. So it's not going to take much for them to get bigger. Alright. One of those cards we need, please. an Urborg. We could tutor, but we've already got our Ghost Quarter. So that's not really helping out. Sejiri Steppe doesn't work either. If we play this, it gives them +1 mana for the purposes of their Maze of Ith, which is awkward. So this is 4, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So just need a Soul Land. So any post effect will give them an Emrakul next turn if we play this Urborg. So I think we're supposed to not play the Urborg. There's this tower. 8 mana for a Karn. Alright, that's not the end of the world. It's annoying. We're just one piece behind all the time here, which is quite frustrating. There's the Lattice. Right, so we'll remove the counters from Karn so that we're not going to be locked under the Lattice. So we've still got a turn to draw a Pithing Needle or a Boseiju. Pithing Needle. You beauty. Bash for 20. And what is this? A Dismember. Yeah, we could have played around that if we'd have used our Spirit Guide to make the Pithing Needle. Now we're in trouble. Yeah, we could have just got through that using the Spirit Guide. At least our opponent is digging, although they're quite likely to be able to play an Emrakul if they find. So these will tap for 5 each, right? If they get another post. Alright, that'll do as well. That's big enough. Yeah, we punted that one in the end. We could have played around a Dismember that I wasn't expecting there. Yeah, that's unfortunate. This is what I would describe as a pretty good matchup on the whole. We tend to go faster than our opponent, and there's only a very narrow amount of things that impact us, but this deck has definitely gotten better with Modern Horizons 3. But yeah, we could have used a Spirit Guide and played around a Dismember. We gave our opponent the black mana with the Urborg that we really didn't need to do. Yeah, I was trying to save this in case we needed some green mana down the tracks if something went wrong. But if something goes wrong from this point, we just lose. So we should have just played this out to play around the Dismember. Oh well, let's go to round 2. Yeah, our hand here doesn't really do anything. We'll be looking to draw one of our many tutors if we keep this one. And we do have 2 pieces of disruption if that's the thing we're interested in. So how many pieces do we have? So we have 8 pieces that go with our Dark Depths. And then we have 10 tutors. So that's 18 cards. So 1 in every 3 draws. I think this is acceptable. Okay, I think I'm going to Bayou and Thoughtseize first. And then we can see if we need to Lotus Petal this Vexing Bauble out or not. How do I feel about what our opponent's got going on over there? This Vexing Bauble will be something that all they're going to do is cast the Once Upon a Time in response. So that's not really worth it. So they can Ancient Tomb out at the Herald's End, but the only threat I'm really worried about is the Fleshraker here. So that can really get out of hand very quickly. The Chalice is kind of annoying for a bunch of our tutors. Right, we'll go for that one. We'll play this out. Do we play out the Bauble here? I'm pretty sure that all the Bauble does in this situation is make our opponent cast Once Upon a Time response. Whereas we can use this mana later on. I think it's better just to pass and save this extra mana we've got available. Like if we draw an Urborg or Thespian stage, we can go relatively quickly. There's another Glaring Fleshraker. It the Herald's End. Yep, not unexpected to see that one. A Dark Depths, you say? If we play out the Dark Depths, that means we have a lot more draws that get us to making a Marit Lage next turn. But we can play the Bauble and dig for an additional card, which is certainly not nothing. I think I'm into drawing an additional card while the getting's good. Cavern of Souls. Alright. We're going to see the Fleshraker almost certainly here. There's the first Fleshraker. These really pop off in multiples. Our opponent didn't attack us for 2. That is an interesting development. I'm happy to get Bayou here. I don't think our opponent's going to be attacking our mana in a meaningful way. Let's draw a card with our Bauble. Yavimaya. That's not the one we wanted, but it gets us deeper into our deck, which could find the thing we require. Right, we're going to play out the depths this time. We are odds on for drawing one of our cards at this point. There's a lot of them. They're really defensive with this It the Herald's End. That is curious to me. Thoughtseize. It's not really where I want to be. 2 life is a lot, but if we take a Glaring Fleshraker out of our opponent's hand, that's worth a lot more. This is most likely to take Kozilek's Command out of our opponent's hand. So we're going to see a little Kozilek's Command in response. Making a few little friends. Yep, so there's a Kozilek's Command. So they're going to use it as a draw spell and as a making a guy spell. Which pings us down for a whole bunch. This is 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we're almost dead here. 9, 10. I guess we have to take this, otherwise we die next turn. Yeah. We played the numbers game and we lost, is what happened with this particular game. Unfortunate. Fleshrager going to come in and ping us. I don't believe we can win from this position. Alright, sideboard-wise. We kind of need to protect our creature from Kozilek's Command. These Abrupt Decays definitely have some use if we're trying to slow our opponent down, but I don't think that's the case. Pithing Needle on Wasteland is going to be good. I don't really think we need to Vexing Bauble anything here, so we can just pack in a bunch of protection. We don't need a Bojuka Bog, so we can pack some more protection. The Thoughtseizes are okay. The Duresses are also okay, but I don't know what I would replace to get some more Duresses in here. Sejiri Steppe, unlikely to be useful, so I guess that gets us 1 Duress. We could get some decays here, but I think we're better off just racing our opponent. This hand does not do what we require. I'm going to mulligan this one. We don't have access to Dark Depths, so this one has to go back as well. What does this do? Not enough. I think we can do better. Alright, we can keep this. So we need a Reclaimer. We don't need a second Dark Depths. I don't think we need these baubles. Not baubles, petals. I probably need one of them. Let's keep her 4. It's a little bit sketchy, but it is what it is. I think we get Bayou here. Our opponent's wastelands are going to be directed to other places. Once upon a time from our opponent. It that heralds the end. A wasteland. And he's going to snap this off straight away. They are. Intriguing. That suggests to me they have multiple wastelands. Right, I guess we're just on the attack with this guy for now. Our opponent probably has Yavimayas of their own that they can help us out with. They're unlikely to play them, but they certainly exist. Dismember. Alright. We are struggling. There's Verdant Catacombs. We don't have any Surveil lands. We can't get any additional value here. I don't think we want to fetch either. We're just going to leave it as is. There's Marginal Thinning versus protecting ourselves from Wasteland. Fleshraker. Pretty good combo. So we can turn this into a Thespian stage and then make a 20/20 next turn. That does the job. Sure, we'll give that a go. Our opponent's going to be spamming out a load of colourless creatures, I would imagine. It that heralds the end. Sure, we suspect that was coming. A Once Upon a Time for an Ancient Tomb. If our opponent's got Kozilek's Return, then we're just in trouble. So if we get a forest, we crop rotate this away for a Thespian stage. We get to untap, play our Dark Depths. We can play around our opponent's wasteland, but we just lose to Kozilek's Command. I think we just play around the wasteland here. Feels like Kozilek's Command. And we can scoop that up. Well, they should be playing way more into this. When you have a Fleshraker in play, you always just max out your Kozilek's commands. A Glaring Fleshraker. Okay. They can still Kozilek's command here. They got one floating, they got this forest, and they got this other spawn. Okay. Go over the Burn Willows. A Sowing Myco spawn. Do they have a Caracas they're going to tutor up here? Cavern of Souls. And then they get 2 triggers off of this. Are they going to cast a Kozilek's command here? They can chain multiple Kozilek's commands. A Life Turtle is not the most robust. Might be able to burn us out from here. They got a Line Breaker. They do have a Line Breaker. That's going to deal us a bunch of damage from pings. That's going to put us to 2, so if they attack with everything, we just lose. Yeah. Our opponent went from lots of power to just killing us. Yeah. Deck's feeling a bit awkward today, I will say. Let's go to round 3. So this hand has turn 1 Wasteland Protection, or Thoughtseize. Turn 2, we'll have 3 mana. Turn 3, we make a 20/20. Is that acceptable? A turn 3 20/20 with 2 pieces of destruction for what our opponent's up to. That seems okay to me. Our opponent's mulliganing so far to 6. We can afford to get a basic here so we don't get Wasteland off our first mana source. Let's Thoughtseize our opponent. Lorien revealed Nethergoyf and a Thoughtseize. I guess we don't really want to play against this Thoughtseize. That can be the thing that goes. So this looks like possibly the blue-black mid-range deck that I played on the channel a week or 2 ago. Can't remember when exactly, but that deck was really good. I think Unlucky Monkey won a challenge with it. There is a Flooded Strand. We're going to see the Nethergoyf, I would assume. It gets to be a 2/3 for 1 mana. That used to be the height of creatures back in the day. Elvish Spirit Guide. So, we play the Thespian stage out. We have 1 mana, 2 mana. So we have the mana here. Yeah, so we can make a 20/20 this turn if we want to. That seems like the sort of thing I'd like to do. Our opponent's got 1 mystery card in hand. Do we do this in our opponent's upkeep to dodge a potential wasteland? I think our opponent's just going to play the frog this turn. There's the frog. We'll take some damage. We don't want to put an extra card in our opponent's graveyard for the purposes of making the frog fly. Let's crop rotate this away. A Force of Will pitching Lorien revealed. That's an annoying one. So we can play a Pithing Needle on Psychic Frog just to save ourselves some damage. But this is going to be connecting against us. And we need to decide what we're doing about that. We could just play this on Wasteland because we know there's going to be Wastelands in our opponent's deck. I think this probably does have to be on the Wasteland. So this is a matchup where having the Vexing Bauble would have been good on the last 2 matchups. But that's not what we had. The Vexing Bauble in, even. Yep, so our opponent gets to draw a card here. And we are falling behind. So you can take our Spirit Guide. Dark Depths is good enough here. Shifting Woodland. That doesn't do anything right now. This will come in tapped unless we go and get a Bayou or Forest first. So we get Bayou. Then we'll play this tapped. Sorry, untapped. Our opponent is jamming a bunch of creatures right down our throat here. They're growing the frog. So this is so they have lethal next turn. And if the cards are no use anyway, better to get them doing something now. We might as well turn our Thespian stage into a Bayou. It's unlikely to be relevant. We never know. No, we got nothing. Yep, came undone a little bit there. So what is useful in this matchup? The Vexing Baubles are actually good here, so I'm a fan of having those. I don't really want the Bojuka Bog that much in this matchup. It's not without text. Like, you can wipe the things so they can't get the frog going, but it's certainly something that we don't really want to be wasting a tutor on. So Duresses to pave the way. We already have the Vexing Bauble, which is kind of doing that. I'm not opposed to having some Abrupt Decays in. And we'll trim on a Lotus Petal for another Decay. We're kind of pre-boarded against Delver for the most part. So I'm kind of happy to have it like this. So we have a Vexing Bauble. We have no way of actually getting Dark Depths. Any green source is good. A black source is fine. I think we can do better than this. I guess I was wrong. We can't do better than this. Let's just escort ourselves neatly into the dumpster, shall we? Alright, this plays. So we get rid of the Ghost Quarter. We want to keep the Hexmage. Probably want to keep the green sources. Get rid of 1 Scrying. So we can go Urborg, Spirit Guide, get the depths, and just try and kill our opponent on turn 2. I'm not sure that's going to be good enough, but it's the play we have. Opponent plays a Wasteland. A Mishra's Bauble. Nope. Okay. They could still play a Wasteland this turn. Just an island. So they might be able to counterspell our Hexmage. They might have something like a Daze, which can interfere with us. Another Urborg. I think we have to go for the play we have. It's not going to get better for us against a deck that's going to be cantripping to find answers. Sometimes you've got to just jam. And when we're mulling to 4, that is a situation where we're jamming. We've still got a decent chunk of draws. So you've got 7 draws that just make a 20/20 straight up. And then if we find some green sources and cantrips, we can do some other stuff. Sorry, not cantrips. Tutors. But it seems like the person who's getting vexed playing this deck today is me. Right, so we found a green source. That's actively helpful. That probably wants to be a forest. Underground Sea. Sure. A Psychic Frog. Yeah. It's probably one of the best cards in Legacy right now. So let's go get our forest. Let's remove an ice counter. I have won by doing this. I don't think this is going to be a matchup where that happens though. We've got to play. It's a good one. You've got a force over there. We can pay through a daze. They do have a force. Oakley dokley. 6 draws that win us the game. The crop rotation can do some work. A wasteland. He's going to take out the depths right now. Are they going to hold up? Harbinger of the Seas. Okay. We did board in 2 Abrupt Decays, so we can answer this. But the problem is our opponent's drawing 2 cards a turn. And we started on 4 cards this game. Another Hexmage that we can't cast. Okay. We've got a swamp somewhere in our deck. We've got Lotus Petal as well, which helps. We need to find the Abrupt Decay. If our opponent's not pitching cards to win this game quicker, it means they must have some pretty good stuff in their hand. They are locked under their own Harbinger a little bit because they can't cast black spells, but that doesn't really matter when they've got what can be an enormous threat in play. Okay, we play this one out and we keep the one with no counters. Then if we can remove this Harbinger of the Tides, then we're A-OK. Or at least we have a chance to do some stuff. So we need to draw Swamp and Abrupt Decay in short order. But our opponent's going to have 5 cards in hand here. Okay, we're down to 10. A Vexing Bauble. This is the card that does something. And that thing is draw us a card deeper. A Yavimaya. I suppose it's better to have this in play than in our hand anyway. We are in some amount of bother here. And a Ponder. What would they like to put us to damage-wise? So even if we kill this Harbinger, we have these Wastelands, which will be pointed at our stuff before the trigger resolves. I think we can probably call it a day here. We don't have the time to draw the things we need. Yeah, we're getting absolutely smashed today. Our opponent's showing us some more stuff. Okay, let's go to round 4. Yeah, this hand works. So we can get Swamp, Thoughtseize our opponent. Turn 2, Thoughtseize our opponent. Into some more Eldrazi's. Not quite what I'm ideally looking forward to playing against, but here we are. I think we just get Swamp. Try and break up our opponent's hand. Let's see how big they're going. No thank you to these cards. I'll take the Thoughtseize. So we need this crop rotation to actually make our 2020. The Sowing Microspawn can get them something annoying, but at this moment in time, if they cast the Sowing Microspawn soon, they won't necessarily know what they're getting, and they might not be able to cast it this turn because of the green component. So we can peek at our opponent's hand and maybe take out the Microspawn and save our poor little hand from collapsing under this Microspawn. Kozilek's Command and a Sowing Microspawn. Jeez. Guess we'll take the command. I play Yavimaya so we can rotate away. You see what our opponent gets with their Microspawn. Ordinarily, these sorts of like stompy decks would be a great matchup for us. But these new Eldrazi decks where they have land destruction, tutors for Wastelands and Caracas, and they've got a 2-mana answer to our Marit Lage. That's a whole new level of stuff for us to have to deal with. Okay. What would you like to do, opponent? You would like to exile our Swamp. I guess I will crop rotate this Swamp away. And I'll get a... It's a Thespian stage. They are going to go fetch up a Wasteland here. There it is. Okay, they're immediately snapping it off. That is unfortunate for us. So now we're probably playing this for the marginal thinning aspect. We could play the Dark Depths so that a Thespian stage gives us a 2020, but it's not the clock that we're necessarily worried about right now. It's more disruption for our mana. We can afford to take a couple of hits from the Microspawn because we know our opponent's pretty threat light. Because every time we've peeked at their hand, we've disrupted a reasonable amount of their clock. But there's plenty of creatures in their deck. Once they get up to 7 mana and start activating our Vugin, we're just going to get chained so Microspawns and we're going to have a rough time. Alright, we're going to have a rough time right now as it turns out. Yikes. I guess we're just going to be losing all of our mana all of the time. Yeah, this Eldrazi deck is great, which is not great for us. A Ghost Quarter. That doesn't do anything here. So our opponent's got us on a 2-turn clock, holding a wasteland over our head. That doesn't feel like a good situation for us to be in. Now we have Pithing Needles, but the problem is we're not going to have enough time to leverage drawing a Pithing Needle because our opponent is clocking us with these big fungus Eldrazi. What is our solution to this problem? So this Eldrazi deck is pretty new on the block, and I haven't had much testing against it. So we are still learning the best way to try and defeat it with Turbodepths. And I don't think the best way of doing that is having Vexing Baubles in the main deck, that's for sure. Alright, opponent. I understand. Okay. I do like that same Micah Spawn card, but boy howdy is it a bit of a pain. So we don't need these Vexing Baubles. That gives us 4 slots to play with. We don't need this Bojuka Bog. That gives us 5 slots to play with. So we could run Duress and some ways of protecting our creatures. That seems like a good shout. I like the Tamiyo Safekeeping here because it protects from wasteland effects as well. The Legolas' quick reflexes is kind of like removal. I like the Sylvan Safekeeper as well. Are we just splitting these in 3 ways? That seems a little bit weird, but I'm not against it. I don't hate the Thoughtseize because it does take out a Kozilek's command, but I think maybe we're better off just having more defensive measures like this. And we probably just want a couple of these to deal with potential chalices. The Duresses don't cost us life. And the only things we care about really are the chalice and the Kozilek's command. So I think the Duresses are probably better on that front. Alright, we'll try this. Still tinkering with how best to approach this matchup. This is turn 1, Duress our opponent. Turn 2, Sylvan Scrying. Turn 3, 2020. It's a play that we're allowed to try and accomplish. I think we do need to Duress to make sure that we don't get stung by some horrible permanents. Okay, we'll take the one thing we get to take. So they can make a turn 2 Flesh Raker. Or Line Breaker. Depending on if they want to pressure our life total. Oh, they drew a Mox Diamond. This means they get to make a turn 1 Flesh Raker. Which then snowballs out more mana for them next turn. Because the Flesh Rakers make mana as they go on. That was a pretty good find for our opponent. They can't make the Micah Spawn next turn. Quick reflexes, you say. So we play this out. We have to cast this now. We go and get the Dark Depths. So next time we can make a 2020. Our opponent needs a land to cast a Micah Spawn this turn. Okay, they have the Secluded Courtyard. They can Micah Spawn and get like a wasteland and take out our Thespian stage. This Micah Spawn card is bananas. Big fan. Obviously, it's horrible on our side of the board right now, but it's a pretty cool card. There is a wasteland. And Eldrazi Spawn. That's going to ping us down a little bit and make their Line Breaker deal way more damage when it comes into play. Alright, they're snapping this off now, which helps us out a little bit. So they can't just hold it over our head. Okay. I suppose we play Thespian stage. We play the Pithing Needle. We name Wasteland to stop future Wastelands. And our opponent makes the Line Breaker. Is that lethal? I don't know. It's a lot of damage. Can we survive that the next turn? I don't know. We'll work out the math when it comes. I don't need to count because they're going to turn their guys sideways. Can they do the Flesh Raker and the Line Breaker this turn? I think they can. Pretty easily. Yeah, so plays Flesh Raker. Pops out a token. Pings us for 1. They play the Flesh Raker. They ping us for another 1. They play the Line Breaker. There it is. They ping us for 2 more. And then the Line Breaker is going to deal us such an enormous amount of damage that I don't think we can get through unless our opponent bricks on their draw. And even then, I'm not sure we get to do that. Because they can put this damage anywhere. This is 10. Oh, we just straight up dead here. Just a turn 3 Goldfish whilst also wastelanding us. What are we supposed to do in that situation? Our opponent absolutely smashed us to pieces. That Mox Diamond was definitely an annoying draw from our side of the table. That's for sure. Yeah. This feels like a real problem matchup that we're going to have to work on. Alright, we are 0-8 in games. This is a disaster. But that's what testing is for. So let's go to the final round. Right, we can't keep this one, so we're going to mulligan. Can't keep this one. No persistent mana sources. Okay, this one works. So if we put this away, so we go Lotus Petal, Verdant Catacombs. We can make a turn 1 Marit Lage here, right? Go and get Bayou. Get this crop rotation gone. Alright, let's make a 2020 now to play around a Wasteland. This is more the sort of pace that I've been wanting to try and beat these Eldrazi Stompy decks. Alright, that's more like it. We got a match on the board. We don't know anything that our opponent's doing. So I guess we just go back in with the same deck. Our opponent was pausing like they had some interaction, so I will keep these in as is, but let's just see how we fare. This hand does not have a route to Marit Lage. This hand does, so we will keep it. I think we'll get rid of one of these Hexmages, since we're probably not even going through the Hexmage route anyway. But we've got a Bauble, which can protect us from some things, although we don't really need protecting if we're going down the Thespian stage route. Oh, I do like the Pithing Needle as well. Alright, let's go for this Pithing Needle. Our opponent might just be fetching with a Flow Strand, so we don't name it. But it's just going on Wasteland. I hope they're just running these because they're blue fetches, not because they're running white spells. We'll see. I don't think I'm going to play out this Lotus Petal. That's for next turn. But you want to save this Boseiju in case we can blow up a Leyline Binding in response to the trigger later on. Although if we need a green source to cast a spell, then I'll definitely be casting it in that respect. Let's play out a Lotus Petal. Let's cast a Vexing Bauble. I'll play out the Dark Depths now. So we could see something like a Leyline Binding into Wasteland. But if we can keep this Boseiju in hand, it might come in more useful against the Leyline Binding on our actual creature. So I think it is better to keep the Boseiju in hand and deploy the Dark Depths. This could be a tough matchup. Our opponent didn't do anything with their second turn. They didn't fetch any Surveil lands. This does make me believe our opponent is like full-on 5-color Yorion deck. Something like an Urborg would be really tasty here. A Ghost Quarter. Do I believe in the power of what we've got going on here? I'm not so sure. Feels like some amount of plough is in our future. A Savai Triome. Haven't seen one of those for a long time. Opponent really wants these tri-lands. This is Mardu, and this is Grixis. Gives the impression that black and red might be their off colours. So you've got a white land and a blue land here. We're not just going to fire this off into our opponent's 6-card hand and 2 white sources of mana. 3 white sources of mana. I think we need to try and get some Thoughtseize action going. Urborg is one of the best draws we have available to us right now. That just unlocks everything. Gives us Thoughtseize, gives us Hexmage, gives us the Boseiju off the Lotus Petal as well. We did not draw that. So I think the play here is probably to Thoughtseize our opponent. I think we play our... I don't know if we play our Boseiju actually, because we might want to see our opponent's hand first. So let's have a Thoughtseize and see how much protection they've got. Our opponent's probably brainstorming to protect something here, I would imagine. Yep, here is the brainstorm. So there's going to be a plough or a binding put on top of their library. So we still can't go and make our creature. Hopefully we'll get a look at our opponent's hand and work out a path through it. Oh, they've just made a mistake into our Vexing Bauble. That's certainly a little bit of fortune that I'm happy to have. I will take this Leyline Binding. I will play out this Boseiju and have the option to make a 2020. So we're ideally wanting to see like fetch land from our opponent here. They're cycling the Dress down in the end step. I wonder if they wanted to put that Force of Negation into the graveyard. They could have just hard cast it. No, they didn't have the second blue actually. But they might have found it off the brainstorm, which is why they didn't cast it. Alright, so we know what our opponent drew off of one of their draws here. So they still got one mystery card because of the Dress down. Put Field of the Dead into the graveyard. So they could play an Uro just to pad their life total here. A Null Drifter. Okay, with that sort of deck. They haven't left open a white mana. So we're looking at a Yorion... I don't know if they're a Dreadnought deck. It might not be a Dreadnought deck. So this goes away. then I think it is time to attempt a friend here. At the very least, this will kill their Null Drifter, which is a permanent I don't really want to see in play. We go for a single black mana. Surgical Extraction on our Dark Depths. Yeah. That's pretty good. So you're saying we need to win with this 2020. That is the impression I am being given right now. We don't have anything that gets us through this Null Drifter, because this is colourless, so we can't Sejiri Steppe our creature. So we do have to attack. We'll go under the bus. We'll play a Thespian stage, and we will pass. We can go and get ourselves... what do we got here? A black source. Yeah, we can get a black source or a green source. We can't get one that is both. So we're trying to dodge Prismatic Ending, Leyline Binding, Source to Plowshares, Teferi. There's quite a few things we need to not get stung by right now. We didn't board in any protection for our Marit Lage because we didn't know what our opponent was playing. Triumph of St. Catherine. I don't care about that. And it is not what this game is about right now. But if they're playing it, maybe that means they've got something else. Otherwise, you would just draw this into your hand and cast your Uro and have more mana to play with. Unless their plan is to play this and cast the Uro, go to 21, take a hit from Marit Lage, and then crack back and try and find an answer off of 2 Uro triggers and a draw step. And just have enough power to try and get the game won. If they can tread water for a turn or two. This has to be the Uro, right? Yeah. Our opponent's life total is now a very irritating one for us. Alright, we'll copy the Survive Triome. I haven't seen one in play for a long time. Let's have one of those. This is Mardu. A Sylvan Scrying. Does that have any interesting utility for us here? It allows us to get an Urborg and play a Hexmage, which stops our opponent gaining life with his Triumph. Not that I think that that's the relevant measure here. Sylvan Scrying. What do we want here? Is it just the Urborg so we can deploy a creature? I think it probably is. So we can block and then sack our Hexmage if we need to. But we're trying to dodge a lot of things here. White removal spells, Teferi. These are all going to be a burden for us to play against. They could have something like Shulder's Edict, but that seems very unlikely given our opponent's got going on. I don't think we're going to sack with this Hexmage because we may need the damage or the body or whatever. If our opponent has a removal spell here, I think we are cooked. They don't have the mana to put Uro into hand and activate it yet. 5 mana. Lorien Revealed. They're digging. Certainly digging. Oh, they didn't have it. And we managed to put a match win on the board. Yikes. That was a brutal league. We got absolutely crushed by the mono green Eldrazi deck. We got beaten by the Cloud Post deck, largely off of the back of that Myca Spawn. We did have a route to winning one of those games where we could have used our Elvish Spirit Guide instead. So there was a slight learning mistake there. I'm not familiar with these current Cloud Post builds, and I wouldn't have thought that you would have Dismember in against the Marit Lage deck. That seems like a weird thing to bring against Turbodepths. But maybe they thought we were more slow depths and had things like Elvish Reclaimer they needed to nab. Obviously, we do run 2 of them. But yeah, I just didn't have that on my radar because I didn't expect that to be a thing our opponent brought in against us. So that's kind of a bit awkward. So yeah, we had a bit of a rough time of it today. But let's talk about our list. So how do I feel about these Vexing Baubles today? So last time I played the Vexing Baubles, we played against, you know, things like Scam and Delver and stuff, where the Vexing Baubles look great. Whereas in the matchups we were playing today, we boarded them out of 3 of our rounds. I think was it 3 or 4 of our rounds? I think it was 4 of our rounds we boarded them out. Actually, no, I think we left them in against the blue-black deck. Yeah, so we boarded them out in 3 of our rounds, and the Eldrazi deck hits pretty hard. And I'm not sure we can afford to have these Vexing Bauble slots in our deck, because they are going to be dead air summertime. Now, yes, we can draw cards from them, but the speed of these Eldrazi decks, like you saw them hitting us for 20 without even using the combat step on turn 3. That kind of shows you how gross these aggro decks can be now. Eat your heart out initiative. So maybe Vexing Bauble isn't the way forward. And Vexing Bauble also does make some of these things slower because we're playing these instead of Not of This World. So maybe we just need to go back to the good old classic Not of This World. So if we get these Vexing Baubles out of here. I like the Vexing Baubles as an answer to some of the fast decks, though. I prefer Vexing Bauble to Collect Roof and Null Rod at the moment. So maybe that's where it is. Maybe this is a sideboard card for us that we stick in the sideboard and we chuck our Not of This Worlds back in and just make sure that the thing we're doing is reliable. So the Vexing Bauble is a bit of disruption that makes our spells more likely to resolve if we have it. That's kind of the line of the Vexing Bauble. The problem is, a lot of decks aren't playing free spells. Like, a lot of decks are playing free spells, don't get me wrong. But a lot of decks aren't playing free spells that we care about. Whereas, if anyone's got removal for our Marit Lage, that's something we're going to care about. So maybe we're better off just having the robust Not of This World package. Like, we could do a split, but I think maybe we want the Vexing Baubles in the sideboard, smash the Not of This World in the main, and sort of enjoy that a little bit more. Because I think last week when I played this, I went 4-1 with a list that had less Vexing Baubles, but Not of This World in the main deck. And that felt pretty reasonable. So maybe we're going to have a little tinker with it and swap some numbers around. But I don't like the 4 Baubles in the main right now. I think if you're playing in a challenge where you're playing against almost exclusively Grixis, Delver, and Scam decks of varying descriptions, in that case, I think the Vexing Bauble is worth main decking. But I think if you're playing in leagues, that's probably not the case because there's a lot more of a diverse field in the league because people aren't necessarily playing the tippity top decks. They're trying to innovate and try and find other stuff and practicing, which is where, you know, the leagues come into effect. So maybe this isn't the right place to be for leagues, but I think you could definitely try the Baubles out in a challenge and it wouldn't look so terrible at all. Because it is very good against those top decks. But those top decks are decks that we're actually kind of good against already. Like Grixis Tempo Delver style decks are absolute bread and butter. We usually roll over Delver decks easily. So that's definitely something that maybe we don't need the extra slots to beat theirs. I think my win rate against them is 70-something% against Delver decks. Now, my win rate against the new Eldrazi decks at the moment is abysmal. So I think I am, like 2-8 or something against Eldrazi decks, maybe. I have to check my numbers, but I haven't played against the Eldrazi deck that many times. It's probably less than that. It's probably more like 1-5, something like that. I can't remember now. But anyway, so we obviously have polarizing matchups. That's what this deck kind of does. That's usually what happens when you're playing a very linear combo deck. And we're going to have to work out how to face these Eldrazi decks because they definitely put the hurt on us in quite a big way. I do like Tamiyo Safekeeping as a way to protect our lands from those Mycosynth guys. But the problem is, as soon as they cast a Mycosynth that's kicked, they're getting 2 pieces of land destruction. And we can't really come back from getting plowed under and then making a 3-3. And they just keep doing that. That is just a bit much. So that's certainly something to think about. Do we just say that's a bad matchup, take it on the chin? Potentially. Like, we do have some bad matchups, but if the Eldrazi decks are what's in the meta rather than like these sort of slow Bant control decks, we just exchange one bad matchup for another and we can live with that, whilst it's still good into the very sort of top decks like your Mono Red Prison, your Delver decks, and your Scam decks. Those are the things that we're okay to play into. Like, we don't have like the best Scam matchup in the world, but our Scam matchup is perfectly reasonable, which is more than a lot of decks can say. Like, I think you basically have to play a lands or a lands adjacent strategy is one of the only things that now seems good into Rescaminator. And even so, their God draws can just run you over, which is a problem with the deck that I imagine is going to get addressed in some amount of bannings. I would be surprised if this time next year they hadn't had at least 2 bans from that deck. And that's just the way things go sometimes. Alright, I hope you enjoyed this one. I'm sorry it wasn't the most impressive performance of the deck, but there's a lot of interesting stuff to learn from it, and that's why we do the testing, and why not use my play points instead of yours? So hopefully this has put some more information for you, and don't worry, it will get distilled down into the guide on my Patreon if you're interested in that. So by all means, check it out. And please remember to like and subscribe. That's a free way of helping the channel out, and it really does help the channel out. And if you know anyone who's interested in legacy content, send them some of my videos because that's all I make. So let's get more people into legacy because it is the best way to play Magic the Gathering, even if at the moment there is some issues with the format in terms of the Rescaminator deck. But I believe it'll be fine at some point in the future. By Christmas, it'll be a much nicer place to play Magic the Gathering. Alright, thank you so much for watching and joining me on this most vexing of leagues. Alright, goodbye. If you'd like to support me in the channel, please check out my Patreon. It has a free guide to budget Turbodepths as well as 3 tiers of support. A low cost one that enters you into my monthly raffle for a free donation deck on the channel, a mid-tier subscription that gives you access to my detailed Turbodepths guide that is updated every month as well as regular articles, and lastly the higher tier gives you all of the above as well as a monthly donation deck for my channel. If you're interested in supporting the channel this way, please check out the link in the description.